My name is Cecilia Galarraga, here with Emily Rayberger from Edible Schoolyard NYC. The theme of our workshop today is Songs, Stories, and Sensory Exploration for Early Childhood. Our objective for this workshop is to show you examples of garden-related lessons and activities that you can do with your youngest students either in person or remotely. Today we will be talking about activities in 4 different areas: science activities, sensory activities, art projects, and books. Science activities. Bulb dissection. Students can examine a bulb cut in half of any variety, such as garlic, shallots, or daffodils, to see the parts inside. They can then use a worksheet to color in the different parts of the bulb. You can also teach them a song to learn about the special way that bulbs grow. I'm a little flower bulb, small and brown, buried in the soil underground. As the days get warmer, watch and see. Up comes a sprout that's grown by me. First comes the bud, and then the flower. I store my own food to give me power. Leave me in the ground, I'll grow again. When spring comes around, I'll see you then. If you are able to teach students in person, planting garlic is a great activity for younger students to do in the fall. The cloves are easy for small hands to handle. Seed dissection. When teaching this activity in person, we began by showing students a map of a seed with the 3 different parts inside. We have students do hand motions for each of the 3 parts in the seed coat, the food, and the baby plant. We used the color blue for the seed coat to keep it warm. We used the color yellow for the food to give it energy. And we used the color red for the baby plant. Students can color in each of the parts of the seed in a corresponding color. Here we did blue for the coat, yellow for the food, and red for the baby plant. Using different colors helps to reinforce color knowledge for the very young students while also helping them to distinguish between the different areas on the seed map. We then provide students with a dry bean soaked overnight, which is easy for students to take apart on their own to see the parts inside. A lima bean is a good choice because of its size, but any large bean will do. For online learning, we also provided a step-by-step guide for how students can do this activity at home. Because it requires only common pantry items, this is a great and accessible way for students to do science at home. Worm bins. We have been keeping a bin of red wiggler worms at PS 216 for several years, and our students love the worms, from pre-K to 5th grade. Caring for the worms is a great way for students to practice responsibility, to care for other living things, and to see scientific concepts in action. If you want to make your own worm bin, you don't need many materials. You need to obtain red wiggler worms, which are best suited to the living conditions of a bin and which are efficient decomposers. Our bin probably has some other worms and garden decomposers who have taken up residence as well over time. Red wiggler worms can be purchased from some garden supply stores and even shipped if purchased online. Many worm bin owners will also be willing to share some of their worms with you since they are pretty prolific. Other than your worm residence, you'll need newspaper, a plastic bin of any size, and some compost scraps. You want to tear and wet newspaper into strips to act as bedding for your worms. This keeps the worms and their environment moist while also absorbing odors. The worms will also eat the paper, so you'll have to replenish the paper periodically. Your bin can be any size, but ideally it should be opaque and not let any light in. The light can be irritating for the worms. You'll also want to make sure you have air holes in the lid so the worms can have air. You can buy kits for worm bins, but they really can be made out of any size of plastic bin. The size just limits how much compost you can put into the bin and produce. You can create holes in the lid of an ordinary plastic container by using a drill or a nail. You'll want to feed the worms with compost scraps that are plant material only. Do not add food with oil, since it can attract other critters to your worm bin. You'll want to avoid overly acidic food items like citrus or onions, but otherwise, fruits and vegetables are fair game. Paper is acceptable as long as it isn't bleached or treated. Ideally, layer your compost scraps in with the newspaper and cover with newspaper to reduce odor. If you are concerned about fruit flies infecting your bin, put your fruit peels into the freezer first to kill off fruit fly larvae. Then add to the bin once thoroughly frozen. Other than that, keep your worm bin moist and your worms will do the work of turning those food scraps into compost for the garden. There are lots of ways for students to be involved in caring for the worm bin. Having students cut up garden scraps and tear newspaper for food and bedding is a great way for students to participate. Students can also help to separate the worms from the finished compost so that the compost can go into the garden. Even if students are not helping with worm bin feeding or maintenance, there are other ways they can engage with the worms. Students can act as scientists and make observations about the worms using a hand lens and writing or drawing about what they see. Worms can also be used for science experiments, such as testing whether certain items will or will not decompose. This can help students understand more broadly about how different materials decompose and their impact on the environment. Sensory activities. For an indoor garden activity, we will create sensory bins with different items from the garden that students can explore using their senses. The goal is to foster students' sense of play while also teaching a new concept. The bins may be themed depending on what academic connections we would like to focus on. For example, we may create stations with bins that each hold different plant parts: roots, stems, leaves, flower, fruits, and seeds. At each station, the bin is labeled with the name of that plant part. Students can use their senses to explore familiar and unfamiliar items, then draw what they see. The students can report back on what they saw at each of the stations. You can also teach students a song with movements about the 6 plant parts. Root, stems, leaves, root, stems, leaves, flower, fruit, flower, fruit. Seeds are on the inside, seeds are on the inside. 6 plant parts, 6 plant parts. You could also use sensory bins to reiterate color knowledge or to learn about what happens in nature in the different seasons. A fall bin, a spring bin, etc. In addition, we like to do similar activities with students outdoors in the garden when we're able. Using the same worksheet, students are prompted to draw what they see outside in the garden space. Students can use a 4 senses worksheet to draw what they see, hear, smell, and touch in the garden. For remote learning, students can do observations from their windows. We created a sensory bingo where students can look for signs of fall and for signs of spring. We also created a tasting word scavenger hunt lesson that students can do at home. Students go over different descriptive tasting words, then find items in their kitchen or house that match those tasting words. Students and families can share back using photos.
Next, we'll be talking about garden and kitchen-related art projects we do with students. Ladybug crowns. Ladybug crowns. This is a lesson we do with both pre-K and kindergarten students. We have done this lesson both virtually and in person. We start this lesson by reading the book Am I Really Different? By Eveline Van Dort. This is a storybook about a ladybug with only one spot, who feels like she's different than the other ladybugs. Then, all of the students get a long strip of white paper that they will turn into their own ladybug crown. They can color the background red and add some black spots to it, as many as they like. At the end of this lesson, we would take green papers with an aphid on them and hide them around the room for students to go and find while wearing their ladybug crowns. They're pretending to be ladybugs eating aphids out of the garden. And these are just a couple slides to show you what the virtual lesson looks like on Google Slides. So I recorded a read aloud here that's available on YouTube if you're interested in the link, and kids can click through the lesson. Rainbow murals. This is a lesson we do with younger students, pre-K, K, or first grade. First, we talk about different fruits or vegetables from each color of the rainbow. Then, we get out a big piece of paper that can be in the shape of a rainbow like this, or with one stripe for each color in the rainbow, and students are asked to make a mural with rainbow fruits and vegetables. This lesson would also normally include some type of rainbow tasting. Maybe they would try 2 or 3 or 4 different fruits or vegetables that were all different colors. And we also sing a rainbow song, which you'll hear next. Hi everybody, this is our rainbow song. This is a song we normally sing as a call and response song with our students, so I'll sing each line twice, and normally the first time the teacher would sing it, and then the second time the students join in. Today I ate the rainbow, today I ate the rainbow, and it was on my plate, and it was on my plate. Today I ate the rainbow, today I ate the rainbow, and it tasted great, and it tasted great. My body is so happy, my body is so happy, and healthy too, and healthy too. Today I ate the rainbow, today I ate the rainbow. How about you? How about you? Seasonal murals and dirt murals. These are other large art projects that we do with students.
So this is a springtime mural that we do with our younger students. What we like to do is talk about the way that the garden is changing during the springtime. So we make a mural like this, where the trees don't have any leaves yet, there's no flowers growing, and we ask students to draw in how the garden is changing. So maybe they'll draw some new plants or animals coming to the garden or growing in the garden. They can add the sun or the leaves growing on the trees, and maybe we'll read a storybook to accompany the lesson. Similar to the springtime mural, we also do a dirt mural with students, where there's a big landscape of the garden and what's underground is completely empty. And then students can draw in the roots on the plants or the bugs that live underground. And at the end, what we like to do is give each kid a little cup of soil and a glue stick, and then they can make a shape or a design using their glue stick and add a little bit of soil onto the mural as well. And we really like to do this lesson when kids have harvested a root vegetable from the garden, or maybe we did some digging in the compost and we're talking about what lives in the soil.
And next, I'll just run through 2 more very simple art projects we like to do with our students. We like to use pipe cleaners and Cheerios to make bird feeders for the garden. It's great for practicing fine motor skills. We'll let kids go out into the garden to choose a place to hang it up, and they can bend them into any shape they want. We also like to use our old seeds from the garden for seed mosaics like this. In the next section, we'll talk about different children's books that connect to gardening or cooking that we like to use for different lessons with our students. The Ugly Vegetables by Grace Lin is a story about a little girl and her mom who are growing different vegetable plants in their garden. The little girl feels like her garden isn't very beautiful compared to the neighbors who are growing lots of different colored flowers. But when it comes time to pick and eat the vegetables, she realizes how great they are. Green is a Chili Pepper is a bilingual book of colors. Kids walk around and discover all of the bright colors in the world around them, like yellow masa, green chilies, and red spices. What's Cooking at 10 Garden Street is a book that takes you on an adventure through an apartment building. And in each apartment, someone is cooking a recipe from a different culinary tradition. At the end, everyone comes together from the building to enjoy a big meal all together. What's really fun about this book is that it includes a simple recipe on each page. If You Hold a Seed by Ellie McKay and The Tiny Seed by Eric Carle are two more books we love to read to our students because they show the whole plant life cycle. In the Garden with Dr. Carver is a fictional story about the real-life agricultural scientist, Dr. Washington Carver. The story takes place in the early 1900s when Dr. Carver comes to visit some students and help them build their own school garden. Dr. Carver teaches the students how to care for the soil and how to act like plant scientists. When we teach this lesson in person, we like to read the story and then have students go outside to either do a garden job or a science walk to practice being plant scientists like Dr. Carver. My co-teacher Cecilia made a virtual version of this lesson, where she recorded herself reading the book and then recorded a tour of the school garden so students could do a science walk virtually. The last book I'm going to mention is A Seed is Sleepy. And this book isn't really a narrative style story, but it does have really beautiful illustrations that we like to use during our lessons. So for example, with our third graders, we do a lesson on seed dispersal, where we talk about how seeds can travel by water, by sticking to an animal, or by flying in the wind. And this book has really beautiful illustrations of different seeds to show examples of that. And in this lesson, students would usually use a small washer or a penny and then build around it with maybe paper or pipe cleaners or other craft supplies to try to build a model of a seed that can travel in one of those three ways. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We look forward to hearing what activities you like doing with your students.